a 3,000-year gamble on modern philosophers. In the distant future, long after our time, who will be remembered as the great thinkers that shaped the philosophical landscape of the modern era? Just as Aristotle, Plato, and other ancient philosophers continue to influence our world today, a few contemporary philosophers may be revered in the same way in the centuries, or millennia, to come. What if we could place a bet that stretches 3,000 years into the future? Who among the thinkers of today will stand the test of time and be remembered for their groundbreaking ideas, insightful theories, and philosophical contributions? As history shows us, it's often not the most famous or the most celebrated minds of their day who become immortalized. Some thinkers who are less known now may very well become the philosophical giants of tomorrow. In this text, we explore the lives, works, and contributions of 10 contemporary philosophers who, based on their innovative ideas and impact on critical areas like ethics, politics, technology, and human identity, may one day be regarded with the same reverence as Aristotle or Plato. Each of these thinkers brings a unique perspective to the modern philosophical dialogue, addressing some of the most pressing questions of our time, questions that will likely resonate for generations. Let's begin this long-term intellectual wager by diving into the works of these remarkable minds. 1. Yuval Noah Harari. Yuval Noah Harari, born in 1976 in Israel, is a historian and philosopher who has gained global recognition through his best-selling works, particularly *Sapiens: A Brief History of Humankind, 2011, Homo Deus: A Brief History of Tomorrow, 2015, and 21 Lessons for the 21st Century, 2018. He received his PhD from the University of Oxford, specializing in medieval military history, but it was his later exploration of human history and its future that catapulted him into the spotlight. Harari is known for his accessible writing style that makes complex philosophical and historical ideas understandable to a broad audience. Harari's books have become foundational in discussions of human history, the impact of technology, and the future of humankind. His first major work, *Sapiens*, explores the history of humanity from the earliest Homo sapiens to the present, offering insights into how we have evolved socially, culturally, and technologically. In *Homo Deus*, he shifts focus to the future, pondering what may happen to humanity as technology evolves. 21 Lessons for the 21st Century turns toward contemporary global issues, addressing topics like artificial intelligence, nationalism, religion, and education. Harari is particularly known for his discussions on the intersection of technology, biology, and the future of humanity. In *Homo Deus*, he predicts that humans will use technology to enhance their physical and mental capabilities, creating a new era where traditional human limitations are transcended. His concerns over artificial intelligence and biotechnology reflect a growing philosophical inquiry into the nature of human existence in a technological age. Harari also emphasizes the role of shared myths, religions, ideologies, and money as tools that bind societies together, shaping human culture and progress. Another major theme in Harari's work is the fragility of humanism in the face of technological advances. He argues that as artificial intelligence becomes more integrated into human life, the very concepts of freedom, equality, and individualism may come into question. In this regard, Harari's philosophical perspective connects deeply with ethical and existential questions facing modern society. In terms of his approach to understanding human culture and development, Harari can be compared to thinkers like Aristotle, who sought to understand the nature of human beings and society. Just as Aristotle's Politics examines the state, ethics, and human well-being, Harari's works analyze the foundations of modern societies and the existential challenges they face. Harari's speculative outlook on the future aligns him somewhat with Plato's more abstract and visionary works, where ideal forms and future possibilities were explored. However, Harari's focus on technology and future challenges distinguishes him from ancient philosophers, making him a truly modern thinker with a critical perspective on how the next centuries will unfold. Number 2, Nick Bostrom. Nick Bostrom, born in 1973 in Sweden, is a philosopher best known for his work in the field of artificial intelligence, the ethics of technology, and future studies. He is currently a professor at the University of Oxford, where he founded the Future of Humanity Institute. Bostrom's interdisciplinary research spans from philosophy to cognitive science, making him one of the leading figures in the discussion on artificial intelligence and its potential risks for humanity. His ideas have been influential in shaping global policy discussions on AI and the future of technology. Bostrom's most notable book is Superintelligence: Paths, Dangers, Strategies, 2014, in which he explores the potential threats posed by the development of artificial superintelligence. He delves into questions surrounding the alignment problem, existential risks, and how humanity can safely navigate the creation of intelligence that surpasses human cognitive abilities. His earlier work, Anthropic Bias: Observation Selection Effects in Science and Philosophy, 2002, is another key text, focusing on the philosophical problems of observation and selection bias in our understanding of the universe. In addition to these books, Bostrom has published numerous papers and essays on topics ranging from transhumanism to simulation theory, and his ideas have deeply influenced not only philosophers, but also technologists and policymakers. Bostrom is widely recognized for his theory of superintelligence, which posits that once artificial intelligence reaches a certain level of sophistication, it will quickly surpass human intelligence. This breakthrough poses a major existential risk, as the goals and values of superintelligent entities may not align with human interests. Bostrom advocates for careful, proactive research on how to control and guide the development of superintelligence in order to avoid catastrophic outcomes for humanity. Another major contribution of Bostrom is his simulation hypothesis, which suggests that our reality could potentially be a simulation created by more advanced beings. While this theory is highly speculative, it raises important philosophical questions about the nature of existence, reality, and consciousness. Bostrom is also a leading figure in transhumanism, advocating for the ethical enhancement of human beings through biotechnology and artificial intelligence. He argues that such enhancements could help humanity overcome physical and cognitive limitations, but they must be pursued with caution due to the potential risks involved. Bostrom's ideas on the future of intelligence and technology position him as a forward-looking philosopher, much like Plato, who speculated on the nature of ideal forms and future societies in works like The Republic. Both Plato and Bostrom share a visionary approach to philosophical inquiry, though their subject matter differs greatly due to the advances in technology. Bostrom's concerns about the moral and existential risks posed by superintelligence also echo some of Aristotle's ethical inquiries. Just as Aristotle was concerned with how humans should live in harmony with nature and society, Bostrom explores how humans must live in harmony with the technological systems they create, ensuring that they do not inadvertently lead to their own destruction. In terms of impact, Bostrom's work on the potential risks of AI parallels the work of early philosophers who grappled with the ethical implications of their time, making him one of the most important contemporary thinkers in the realm of future studies and technological ethics. Martha Nussbaum, born in 1947 in New York, is an American philosopher whose work spans ethics, political philosophy, and the philosophy of emotions. She is currently a professor at the University of Chicago and has made significant contributions to discussions on human capabilities, justice, and the role of emotions in ethics. Nussbaum has a background in classical studies and has extensively engaged with ancient Greek and Roman philosophy, which she integrates into her modern philosophical inquiries. Her ability to bridge the ancient and the contemporary has made her one of the most influential philosophers of our time. Nussbaum is best known for her capability approach, which she developed alongside economist Amartya Sen. This framework is laid out in her influential works, Women and Human Development, 2000, and Creating Capabilities, 2011. The capability approach shifts the focus of human development and justice from economic growth to what individuals are able to do and be, emphasizing human well-being, agency, and freedom. This framework has been widely applied in discussions of gender, social justice, and global development. Another major work is Upheavals of Thought, The Intelligence of Emotions, 2001, where Nussbaum argues that emotions play a critical role in our ethical lives. Drawing on both modern psychology and ancient Stoic philosophy, she challenges the traditional view of emotions as irrational forces, asserting instead that they are essential to moral reasoning and human flourishing. In addition to these works, Nussbaum has published extensively on justice, human rights, and the intersections of law and philosophy. Her books Hiding from Humanity, 2004, and The Monarchy of Fear, 2018, delve into the role of shame, disgust, and fear in political life, particularly how these emotions can shape laws, public policy, and social movements. Nussbaum's capability approach is one of her most widely recognized contributions. In contrast to traditional measures of economic development, such as GDP, this approach emphasizes the real freedoms and opportunities people have to achieve well-being. It stresses that governments and societies should focus not merely on wealth, but on enabling individuals to realize their full potential in life. This approach has had a significant impact on global discussions about justice, gender equality, and human rights. Her work on emotions also sets her apart from many contemporary philosophers. Nussbaum argues that emotions like love, fear, and anger are not mere passive experiences, but are deeply connected to our ethical understanding of the world. She contends that emotions help us recognize the moral significance of people and situations, making them integral to ethical deliberation. Nussbaum also addresses justice from a feminist perspective, arguing that true justice can only be achieved when societies fully account for the lived experiences and needs of marginalized groups, particularly women. Her feminist philosophy has informed discussions on global justice, gender equality, and the rights of disabled individuals. Nussbaum's engagement with the works of ancient Greek and Roman philosophers, especially Aristotle and the Stoics, is one of the hallmarks of her approach. Her capability approach draws heavily from Aristotle's concept of human flourishing, eudaimonia, which emphasizes living a life of virtue and realizing one's potential. Like Aristotle, Nussbaum believes that a just society must provide individuals with the necessary conditions to achieve well-being. In her analysis of emotions, Nussbaum's work aligns with the Stoic philosophers, who also recognize the importance of managing emotions in the pursuit of a good life. However, while the Stoics aim to minimize the influence of emotions, Nussbaum sees them as integral to our moral development, creating a modern twist on ancient ideas. Nussbaum's ability to synthesize ancient philosophy with modern issues places her in a unique position as a bridge between classical and contemporary philosophical thought. Her work on justice and emotions echoes Aristotle's ethical inquiries, but applies them to the complex social and political challenges of today. Ray Kurzweil, born in 1948 in New York, is an inventor, futurist, and philosopher who has made significant contributions to the fields of artificial intelligence, machine learning, and the future of humanity. Kurzweil is known for his bold predictions about technological progress, particularly in the realm of human enhancement and artificial intelligence. He has been an advocate of transhumanism, the idea that humans can transcend their biological limitations through technology. Currently, Kurzweil serves as a director of engineering at Google, where he focuses on machine intelligence and natural language processing. Kurzweil has authored several influential books, with The Singularity is Near, When Humans Transcend Biology, 2005, being one of his most well-known works. In this book, he predicts that technological advancements will eventually lead to a point where human intelligence will merge with artificial intelligence, creating a new era of superintelligence known as the singularity. His earlier books, such as The Age of Spiritual Machines, 1999, and The Age of Intelligent Machines, 1990, laid the groundwork for his exploration of the future of AI and human evolution. Kurzweil has also contributed to the development of several innovative technologies, including optical character recognition, OCR, and speech recognition systems. His work in both philosophy and technology has made him a key figure in discussions about the future of humanity in a technologically advanced world. Kurzweil's most notable theory is the concept of the singularity, which predicts that technological progress, particularly in artificial intelligence, will accelerate exponentially. He argues that by around 2045, humans will create machines with intelligence far surpassing that of the human brain. At this point, Kurzweil believes the boundaries between human and machine will blur, leading to the merging of biological and artificial forms of intelligence. He is also a leading advocate of transhumanism, the belief that humans can use technology to enhance their physical and mental capacities, potentially achieving immortality or vastly extended lifespans. Kurzweil himself takes hundreds of supplements daily in an effort to extend his life until medical and technological advances allow for radical life extension. Another significant contribution is his exploration of neural networks and machine learning, particularly in his work at Google. Kurzweil envisions a future where AI systems can process information and learn in ways that mimic or even surpass human cognition. He argues that these advancements will revolutionize fields such as medicine, education, and environmental science. Kurzweil's work also addresses ethics in technology. He emphasizes the importance of ensuring that technological progress benefits humanity as a whole, rather than creating divisions between those who have access to enhancements and those who do not. Kurzweil's visionary approach to the future of humanity draws some parallels to the speculative philosophy of Plato, particularly in his envisioning of ideal forms of intelligence and society. Like Plato's theory of forms, Kurzweil's ideas about the singularity involve transcending the limitations of the material world to achieve a higher state of existence. His belief in technological enhancement and the merging of human and machine also evokes themes from ancient Stoicism, where individuals sought to control their physical limitations and emotions to achieve rational mastery over the self. However, Kurzweil's optimism about technology is a departure from the more conservative and naturalist views of most ancient philosophers. While Aristotle focused on human flourishing through virtue and reason, Kurzweil imagines a future where flourishing involves enhancing human capabilities beyond natural limitations. His forward-thinking philosophy represents a significant shift from traditional philosophical concerns, but retains the timeless quest for human perfection and understanding.
John McDowell, born in 1942 in South Africa, is a prominent contemporary philosopher known for his work in epistemology, philosophy of mind, and ethics. McDowell's academic career has been predominantly based at the University of Pittsburgh, where he has taught since the late 1980s. His work has significantly impacted a range of philosophical debates, from the nature of perception and thought to the role of language in shaping human experience. McDowell is particularly known for his efforts to bridge the gap between analytic and continental traditions in philosophy, bringing together insights from thinkers like Immanuel Kant, Ludwig Wittgenstein, and Aristotle. McDowell's most influential work is Mind and World, 1994, where he argues for a reconciliation between human experience and the external world through the lens of perception and conceptual thought. He challenges the traditional distinction between the mind and the external world, proposing that our thoughts and perceptions are already imbued with conceptual content, thus breaking down the sharp division between subjectivity and objectivity. This work has been foundational in debates about realism, perception, and the nature of human understanding. Other key works include his essays on virtue ethics, where he draws from Aristotle's ethical framework to argue that moral knowledge is a form of perceptual judgment rather than the application of general rules. In these essays, McDowell defends a form of moral realism, which holds that moral facts exist independently of our recognition of them, but our moral experience is shaped by our conceptual framework and upbringing. One of McDowell's central contributions is his defense of conceptualism, the idea that our perceptions of the world are always shaped by our conceptual understanding. In Mind and World, he argues that perception is not a passive reception of sensory data, but an active engagement with the world that involves our pre-existing concepts and beliefs. This view stands in contrast to more empiricist views of perception, which see the mind as a blank slate that passively receives impressions from the external world. McDowell also addresses the naturalism debate, arguing for what he calls second nature, a concept derived from Aristotle. He suggests that human beings develop a second nature through education and the acquisition of language, which allows them to engage with the world in a uniquely human way. This second nature allows us to perceive the world through moral and ethical lenses, making ethical judgments part of our everyday experience rather than abstract rules. Another major aspect of McDowell's philosophy is his exploration of freedom and reason. He argues that true freedom is found not in independence from external constraints, but in the ability to act rationally in accordance with one's understanding of the world. For McDowell, reason is not a detached, purely cognitive activity, but deeply intertwined with our practical engagements and experiences. McDowell's work draws extensively on Aristotle, particularly in his writings on ethics and human nature. His concept of second nature is rooted in Aristotle's idea that human beings develop their moral character through habit and education. Like Aristotle, McDowell believes that ethical knowledge is a form of practical wisdom that emerges from living a virtuous life, rather than following a set of prescribed rules. In terms of epistemology, McDowell's conceptualism can be compared to Kant's theory of knowledge, which posits that the mind actively shapes our experience of the world through categories of understanding. However, McDowell departs from Kant by rejecting the sharp distinction between the phenomenal, what we can experience, and noumenal, what exists independently of our experience realms, arguing instead that our engagement with the world is always mediated by our conceptual framework. McDowell's emphasis on the unity of reason and experience also echoes themes from Wittgenstein's later philosophy, particularly in the way language shapes our understanding of the world. Like Wittgenstein, McDowell sees language as a tool that structures our engagement with reality, rather than a mere vehicle for transmitting information. Overall, McDowell's philosophy is a synthesis of ancient, modern, and contemporary thought, making him a unique figure in the landscape of current philosophical discourse. Elizabeth Anderson, born in 1959 in the United States, is a philosopher specializing in ethics, political philosophy, and feminist theory. She is a professor at the University of Michigan, where she has built a reputation as one of the leading voices in social justice, egalitarianism, and democratic theory. Anderson's work is deeply concerned with the practical implications of philosophical ideas, particularly in relation to issues such as racial and gender equality, the nature of work, and the role of democracy in achieving social justice. Her approach is known for bridging the gap between philosophical theory and real-world issues, particularly in the realms of economics and political inequality. Anderson's most influential work is The Imperative of Integration, 2010, where she explores the moral and political necessity of integrating racially segregated societies. She argues that segregation harms not only the individuals who are segregated, but also the larger democratic society by perpetuating inequality and limiting opportunities for mutual understanding and cooperation. Anderson draws on both philosophical and empirical sources to make the case for integration as a moral and political imperative for achieving social justice. Another significant work is Private Government: How Employers Rule Our Lives and Why We Don't Talk About It, 2017, where Anderson critiques the authoritarian nature of the modern workplace. She argues that, despite living in democratic societies, many individuals experience a form of private government in the workplace, where employers exercise unchecked power over workers. She advocates for greater workplace democracy and the extension of democratic principles into the economic sphere. Anderson has also written extensively on feminist philosophy, particularly in relation to equality and justice. Her work in this area challenges traditional liberal theories of equality by emphasizing the importance of relational equality, ensuring that individuals are treated as equals in social interactions and relationships, not just in the distribution of resources. One of Anderson's central contributions to philosophy is her defense of relational equality. She argues that justice is not merely about distributing resources equally or ensuring fair opportunities. It is also about the relationships individuals have with one another. For Anderson, a just society is one in which individuals stand in relations of equality, where they are treated with respect and dignity in their interactions with one another. This idea of relational equality has been influential in discussions of gender, race, and economic inequality. Anderson's critique of private government challenges traditional liberal views of the workplace. She argues that many modern workplaces operate like dictatorships, where employers have significant control over employees' lives without any democratic oversight. She calls for the extension of democratic principles to the workplace, advocating for greater worker participation in decision-making processes and more protections for workers' rights. In her work on integration, Anderson highlights the moral and practical harms of segregation. She argues that segregation perpetuates inequality and undermines democratic values by creating barriers to mutual understanding and cooperation between different racial and social groups. Anderson's work in this area has influenced discussions on education, housing, and public policy. Anderson's focus on relational equality can be compared to Aristotle's concept of justice, particularly in his Nicomachean Ethics. Like Aristotle, Anderson is concerned with how individuals relate to one another in society, emphasizing that justice is not just about rules and distribution, but about the quality of relationships within a community. Aristotle's emphasis on living well within a polis, community, resonates with Anderson's view that justice requires individuals to stand in relationships of respect and dignity with one another. Her critique of power in the workplace also draws comparisons to the concerns of ancient philosophers like Plato, who critiqued the unjust concentration of power in the hands of a few. While Plato focused on political power, Anderson applies similar concerns to the economic sphere, arguing that unchecked power in the workplace undermines democratic values and the well-being of individuals. Anderson's philosophical work also aligns with Enlightenment thinkers like John Locke, who advocated for individual rights and freedoms. However, Anderson extends these ideas by arguing that true freedom requires more than just formal rights. It requires social and relational equality as well. Overall, Elizabeth Anderson's work stands at the intersection of ethical theory and social justice, making her a key figure in contemporary political and feminist philosophy, with the potential to be remembered as one of the great philosophers of our time.
Frank Jackson, born in 1943 in Australia, is a philosopher best known for his work in the philosophy of mind, epistemology, and metaphysics. Jackson's contributions to the philosophy of mind, particularly through his famous thought experiment known as Mary's Room, have sparked significant debate in discussions about the nature of consciousness, perception, and the limits of physicalism. He has held prominent academic positions at institutions such as the Australian National University and Princeton University, and his work continues to influence contemporary philosophical thought in areas related to the mind and knowledge. Jackson's most famous work is undoubtedly the thought experiment presented in his 1982 paper, Epiphenomenal Qualia, which introduces the idea of Mary's Room. In this thought experiment, Jackson imagines a scientist, Mary, who knows everything there is to know about color perception from a scientific standpoint, but has lived her entire life in a black and white room. When Mary eventually experiences color for the first time, Jackson argues she learns something new, namely, what it is like to see color. This thought experiment challenges physicalist theories of the mind by suggesting that there are aspects of conscious experience that cannot be fully explained by physical facts alone. In addition to his work on the philosophy of mind, Jackson has written extensively on ethics, most notably in his book From Metaphysics to Ethics, A Defense of Conceptual Analysis, 1998. In this work, Jackson defends the idea that conceptual analysis is central to philosophical inquiry, arguing that our understanding of the world is grounded in the analysis of the concepts we use to describe it. Jackson is best known for his argument against physicalism, the view that everything about the mind can be explained in terms of physical processes. Through the Mary's Room thought experiment, Jackson suggests that there are non-physical properties of consciousness, such as qualia, the subjective, experiential qualities of perception that cannot be fully captured by physical explanations. Although Jackson later changed his stance on physicalism, acknowledging that he had been wrong, the thought experiment remains one of the most discussed in the philosophy of mind. In addition to his work on qualia, Jackson has contributed to conceptual analysis, arguing that philosophical inquiry is deeply connected to the way we use and understand concepts. His work in this area has helped shape contemporary debates on how philosophers approach problems related to language, knowledge, and ethics. Jackson's work on moral philosophy includes a defense of moral realism, the idea that there are objective moral facts that exist independently of human beliefs or perceptions. He argues that just as there are facts about the physical world, there are moral facts that can be discovered through rational inquiry. Jackson's work, particularly in the philosophy of mind, draws some comparisons to Plato and his theory of forms, where Plato suggested that there are non-physical forms or ideals that exist beyond the material world. Jackson's argument that qualia exist outside of physical facts mirrors Plato's belief in the existence of abstract forms that cannot be fully understood through empirical observation alone. His approach to moral realism has parallels with Aristotle's ethical theories, particularly the idea that there are objective truths about what constitutes a good life. Aristotle's virtue ethics focuses on the development of moral character and the realization of human potential, which aligns with Jackson's belief in objective moral truths that can guide human behavior. At the same time, Jackson's emphasis on conceptual analysis connects his work to more modern philosophers like Immanuel Kant, who also believed that much of our understanding of the world is shaped by the categories and concepts through which we perceive it. Like Kant, Jackson believes that philosophical inquiry is deeply connected to the ways in which we organize and conceptualize our experiences. Overall, Jackson's contributions to the philosophy of mind and ethics place him among the most influential contemporary philosophers, and his work continues to provoke thought and debate in some of the most fundamental areas of philosophical inquiry. Tim Maudlin, born in 1958 in the United States, is a philosopher known for his work in the philosophy of physics, metaphysics, and the foundations of science. He is currently a professor at New York University and has made significant contributions to the philosophy of time, space, and the interpretation of quantum mechanics. Maudlin's work bridges the gap between philosophical inquiry and the highly technical, mathematical world of modern physics. His approach to philosophical problems is notable for its rigor and clarity, making him a prominent figure in both philosophical and scientific circles. Maudlin's most well-known work includes Quantum Non-Locality and Relativity, Metaphysical Intimations of Modern Physics, 1994, in which he explores the philosophical implications of quantum mechanics and relativity. In this book, he delves into the concept of non-locality, the idea that particles can influence each other instantaneously over vast distances, challenging traditional notions of space and time. Maudlin argues that these phenomena demand a re-evaluation of how we understand reality, causality, and the nature of the physical world. Another influential work is The Metaphysics Within Physics, 2007, where Maudlin explores the relationship between physical theories and metaphysical inquiry. He argues that metaphysics cannot be divorced from physics, and that many of the foundational questions in physics, such as the nature of time and space, are deeply metaphysical in nature. He advocates for a metaphysical framework that is informed by and consistent with the findings of modern physics. Maudlin has also written extensively on the philosophy of time, particularly in his book Philosophy of Physics, Space and Time, 2012, where he provides a comprehensive account of the nature of space-time, the direction of time, and the implications of relativity and quantum theory for our understanding of these concepts. One of Maudlin's central contributions is his work on the interpretation of quantum mechanics. He is a prominent defender of realism in quantum theory, arguing that the phenomena observed in quantum mechanics should be understood as reflecting real aspects of the world rather than mere statistical regularities or instrumental predictions. This view contrasts with more skeptical interpretations of quantum mechanics, which downplay the ontological significance of quantum phenomena. Maudlin is also a key figure in the debate over non-locality in quantum mechanics. He has argued that the non-local correlations observed in experiments like those demonstrating Bell's theorem indicate that the structure of space-time may be more complex than traditionally thought. His work suggests that we may need to revise our understanding of causality and the nature of physical reality to accommodate these quantum phenomena. In the philosophy of time, Maudlin challenges the idea that time is merely a human construct or an illusion. He defends the position that time is a fundamental feature of the universe, with a real direction that flows from the past to the future. This view is opposed to some interpretations of modern physics, which suggest that time is symmetrical and that the distinction between past and future is an emergent phenomenon rather than a fundamental one. Maudlin's work on the metaphysical implications of modern physics can be compared to the inquiries of ancient philosophers like Aristotle and Plato, who also sought to understand the nature of reality and the underlying structure of the universe. Aristotle's interest in causality and the nature of time is reflected in Maudlin's exploration of these topics through the lens of contemporary science. In terms of his defense of realism in quantum mechanics, Maudlin's work resonates with Plato's theory of forms, which posits that there are real, abstract entities that underlie the phenomena we observe in the physical world. Like Plato, Maudlin argues that the entities described by quantum mechanics, such as particles and fields, reflect real features of the universe, even if they are not directly observable. Maudlin's approach to metaphysics also draws comparisons to the more empirical philosophy of Democritus, who sought to explain the world in terms of atoms and the void. Maudlin's engagement with the deep structure of the physical world through the tools of modern science echoes Democritus's attempt to provide a systematic account of nature based on its fundamental components. Overall, Tim Maudlin's work stands at the intersection of philosophy and science, making him one of the most important contemporary philosophers in the field of metaphysics and the philosophy of physics. His rigorous approach to the interpretation of quantum mechanics and the nature of time ensures that his contributions will remain central to philosophical discussions for years to come. Jonathan Glover, born in 1941 in England, is a philosopher and bioethicist whose work has focused on ethics, moral psychology, and the philosophy of human nature. Glover has made significant contributions to the field of bioethics, particularly about issues such as euthanasia, genetic engineering, and the ethics of war. He has held prominent academic positions, including at Oxford University and King's College London, and has been involved in various international human rights initiatives. Glover's work emphasizes the need for moral reasoning that is deeply connected to human psychology and the realities of the modern world. Glover's most influential book is Humanity, A Moral History of the 20th Century, 1999, in which he examines the moral disasters of the 20th century, including the Holocaust, nuclear war, and genocide. Glover explores how such atrocities were made possible by the psychological mechanisms that allow individuals and societies to detach from the humanity of others. He argues that moral progress requires a better understanding of these psychological factors and the cultivation of empathy and moral imagination. Another significant work is Causing Death and Saving Lives, 1977, in which Glover explores the ethical complexities surrounding life and death decisions, including abortion, euthanasia, and the allocation of medical resources. His nuanced approach to these issues has made this work a key text in bioethics, influencing debates on the value of life and the responsibilities of medical practitioners. Glover's interest in human nature and psychology is also evident in his book What Sort of People Should There Be, 1984, where he examines the ethical implications of genetic engineering and the potential for human enhancement. He raises questions about the kind of future we want to create and the moral considerations that should guide decisions about altering human biology. Glover's work often focuses on the intersection of moral philosophy and human psychology. He argues that understanding human behavior and the psychological mechanisms that underpin moral decision-making is essential for ethical theory. In Humanity, Glover explores how people and societies can commit atrocities by dehumanizing others, emphasizing the importance of empathy and emotional engagement in preventing moral catastrophes. Glover also advocates for a form of utilitarianism that is sensitive to the complexities of human life. In Causing Death and Saving Lives, he examines how utilitarian principles can be applied to difficult ethical questions, such as whether it is morally permissible to end a life to prevent suffering, or how to allocate scarce medical resources. However, he tempers this utilitarianism with a recognition of the psychological and emotional dimensions of moral choices. In his work on bioethics, Glover has been an important voice in discussions about the ethical implications of emerging technologies. He has argued that while genetic engineering and human enhancement hold great promise, they also raise profound ethical questions about the nature of humanity and the potential for inequality. Glover's cautious but open-minded approach to these issues has influenced both academic and public debates on the future of biotechnology. Glover's exploration of the psychological mechanisms behind moral behavior can be compared to Aristotle's emphasis on virtue ethics and the development of moral character. Like Aristotle, Glover believes that moral education and the cultivation of empathy and understanding are crucial for leading a virtuous life. Both philosophers are concerned with how individuals can develop the moral faculties necessary for ethical decision-making. Glover's utilitarian leanings also connect him to Jeremy Bentham and John Stuart Mill, though his emphasis on the emotional and psychological aspects of moral choices adds a layer of complexity that goes beyond traditional utilitarian thought. Glover's nuanced utilitarianism, which takes into account the real-world effects of moral decisions on human psychology, represents an evolution of this ethical tradition. His work in bioethics, particularly about genetic engineering and human enhancement, can also be seen as a continuation of Plato's inquiries into the ideal form of society and human nature. While Plato imagined a society governed by philosopher kings and guided by reason, Glover grapples with the ethical implications of reshaping human nature itself through technological means. Both philosophers are concerned with the question of what kind of people we should strive to be, though Glover's focus is on the possibilities and dangers posed by modern science. Overall, Jonathan Glover's work stands at the intersection of ethics, psychology, and bioethics, making him one of the most important contemporary philosophers in discussions about moral responsibility, human nature, and the future of humanity. Thomas Metzinger, born in 1958 in Germany, is a philosopher and cognitive scientist whose work focuses on the philosophy of mind, consciousness, and ethics. Metzinger is particularly known for his contributions to the study of self-consciousness and his challenges to traditional notions of the self. His interdisciplinary approach combines philosophy, neuroscience, and psychology to explore how consciousness arises from brain processes and what this means for our understanding of identity. Metzinger has held academic positions at universities in Frankfurt, Mainz, and elsewhere, and his work has had a profound influence on both philosophy and the cognitive sciences. Metzinger's most influential book is Being No One, The Self-Model Theory of Subjectivity, 2003, where he argues that the self is not a fixed entity, but rather a model created by the brain to organize sensory input and facilitate interaction with the world. According to Metzinger, our sense of self is an illusion generated by neural processes, and there is no self existing independently of these processes. This groundbreaking work has sparked significant debate in both philosophy and cognitive science, particularly regarding the nature of consciousness and personal identity. In The Ego Tunnel, The Science of the Mind and the Myth of the Self, 2009, Metzinger further develops these ideas for a broader audience, arguing that our subjective experience of being a self is a useful but ultimately misleading construct created by the brain. He explores the ethical implications of this view, particularly in relation to free will, personal responsibility, and the development of artificial intelligence. Metzinger has also been a prominent voice in discussions about the ethics of emerging technologies, especially in relation to artificial intelligence, virtual reality, and neuroenhancement. He has argued that advancements in these fields will challenge our traditional understanding of personhood and morality, requiring new ethical frameworks to address the profound changes that may arise. Metzinger is best known for his self-model theory of subjectivity, which posits that the self is not a thing but a process, a model constructed by the brain that allows organisms to navigate the world. According to Metzinger, the brain generates a self-model to integrate sensory information and coordinate behavior, but this self-model is not a real entity. It is an illusion, albeit a useful one, that helps us make sense of our experiences. One of the major implications of Metzinger's theory is that our common understanding of the self as a stable, enduring identity is flawed. If the self is just a model constructed by the brain, then concepts like personal identity, free will, and moral responsibility need to be re-examined. Metzinger's work suggests that many of our intuitions about what it means to be a person may be based on a misunderstanding of how the mind works. In addition to his work on the self, Metzinger has explored the ethical implications of artificial intelligence and neuroenhancement. He argues that as technologies like brain-computer interfaces and virtual reality become more sophisticated, they will blur the boundaries between humans and machines, raising difficult ethical questions about identity, consciousness, and the treatment of artificially intelligent beings. Metzinger is also concerned with consciousness studies, advocating for a rigorous, scientific approach to understanding consciousness. He has criticized both philosophy and neuroscience for their failure to adequately address the hard problem of consciousness, how subjective experience arises from neural activity. His work encourages a more integrated approach to this question, combining insights from philosophy, cognitive science, and artificial intelligence. Metzinger's self-model theory can be compared to Buddhist philosophy, which also posits that the self is an illusion. Just as Metzinger argues that the self is a construct of the brain, Buddhist thinkers have long held that the self is an impermanent and illusory phenomenon, and that clinging to a sense of personal identity can be a source of suffering. However, while Buddhist philosophy emphasizes the ethical and spiritual implications of recognizing the illusory nature of the self, Metzinger's focus is more on the scientific and philosophical aspects. Metzinger's work on consciousness also has echoes of Descartes' famous exploration of the self and the mind in Meditations on First Philosophy. While Descartes concluded that the self, I think, therefore I am, was a foundational element of human existence, Metzinger takes a radically different view, arguing that the self is not a fundamental reality, but a useful fiction created by the brain. As we conclude this exploration of 10 contemporary philosophers, we reflect on the significance of their ideas in shaping the future of human thought. Just as Aristotle, Plato, and other ancient philosophers have had a lasting impact on the intellectual traditions that followed them, these modern thinkers are poised to leave their mark on the centuries to come. One of the ways to achieve a form of immortality is through the influence we have on the world. These philosophers have not only contributed to the intellectual landscape of today, but have also set the stage for the future, leaving a legacy that will continue to inspire and provoke thought long after their time. Through their ideas, they have created lasting imprints on society, ensuring that their contributions will be remembered and debated for generations to come. At Fact Up Realm, we have compiled this list to introduce more people to these thinkers, as their ideas deserve wider recognition. However, this list is not definitive. There are many other influential philosophers and thinkers who could just as easily have been included. This list reflects our estimation of those who may shape the future, but it's possible that another list will be created in the future to highlight more brilliant minds who have the potential to leave an indelible mark on philosophy. The work of these philosophers challenges us to rethink what it means to be human, how we relate to each other, and how we can navigate the complex challenges of the future. Their influence may well ensure that they, too, achieve a form of philosophical immortality.